You go to strip clubs before games. Um,
Mm.
so I think they're happy about this
It's
Rams
not
win. They take
Is
the
that bad?
Raiders. They don't. They're not taking the Raiders
Is
serious.
that a bad thing? I don't know.
The prime thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. We had a bye week. The Raiders had a bye week, but we're back previewing the Dolphins game. I am Ted Wynn, your host. That's Sean Reed. That's Vic Tafer. And we're into week 11 already. Let's get into it. Let's get into the news. The Raiders decided yesterday, they announced that they're going back with Gardner Minshew. I think there's speculation that Desmond Ritter might be the starting quarterback after Minshew got benched again in the last game for Ritter. But the Raiders are going back to Minshew. What do we think about that?
I was a little surprised because I thought, we benched Gardner last time. Antonio said he wanted to spark. I thought Ritter was a little rough, but no rougher than we've watched this year. So I thought they might just go for the whole new makeover, a new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, and kind of deal. But they looked at it and they decided that Gardner gives them the best chance to win going forward. We don't watch practice, so I don't know how well Desmond's been doing in practice, but my guess would be not great. So Gardner Minshew, I think he's taking some hits to his confidence, but he's still the guy.
Yeah, and I mean, when he was benched against the Bengals, like I guess theoretically they had a chance to come back, but the game was pretty much over with at that point. I think it was kind of similar to that first time that Minshew got benched. I forget what game it was, but when O'Connell first came in, like the game was out of hand. I think it was the final drive, and it didn't really matter. So I think it's the first and third benching don't have as much weight as the second one did. I don't think. But also, it's just a matter of, I mean, is the alternative actually going to be better? And I don't think Desmond Ritter, showed last game or throughout his career that he's, any less bad than Gardner Minshew is, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And I think the other part of it is, and I think we wrote about it in our midseason prediction story last week, but I think we would both probably say we think Aiden O'Connell is going to become the starter again once he's back from his broken thumb, which he's eligible to return in week 13, I believe, against the Chiefs in Kansas City. That might be a rough game to throw him back out there, but if he's healthy and ready to go, I think he has a pretty strong chance of becoming a starter again. And so I think it's more of a decision where Minshew's the starter for now and probably not the starter at the end of the season.
Said the third benching isn't as impactful. Is it because like his confidence is so shot already? Like nothing really can take it down any further. I mean, like this guy was already. Gardner's always been a little. He doesn't really throw on time, and he's a little jumpy in the pocket. But just the last few weeks watching him, man, it's like he just does not trust the protection. He doesn't trust what he's seeing. It's bad, and like the Raiders aren't doing him any favors, benching him early against the Bengals. So I don't think that he could go much lower than his confidence level. Speaking of his confidence level, I don't think he could go much lower than it already is. Um, but I mean, he's had a week off, so maybe the week off could kind of reset things and maybe get him back to a baseline to a certain degree. But I think the thing with Desmond Ritter and Antonio Pierce has talked about this so much. He's talked about turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. Ritter's always been a very high turnover quarterback. So, I mean, I imagine if he's turning the ball over a lot in practice, which is kind of a part of his game, he's probably not going to get much of a chance to start.
Yeah, I think he's probably seen more as a healthy body once Aiden went down, and now I think they didn't really want to go that route. I think, like Tashan said, when Aiden's back, probably back in a couple of weeks. I think we saw him in the locker room yesterday, and his cast is off his hand. He has to get working on the grip, whatever. But I think he'll be back fairly quick. So I think a couple of weeks probably. And so why, if you're juggling two, flame torches, why juggle a third? Like just stick with the two guys you got. And I think Aiden is going to be the guy going forward. And you mentioned Gardner's confidence. We asked him about that on Wednesday, and He admitted that he's taking a hit. I mean, clearly you can't you can't feel great about yourself when you get pulled 3 times. He knows he leads the league in picks, so I think like you say, he's working through it. He's a veteran guy, pretty positive person overall. I think maybe the new coaching changes with Norv and Scott Turner coming in can help him and give him a fresh outlook. But yeah, he's the guy for I think the next 2 games at least, and we'll see if he can play better.
Yeah, I mean, on the Raiders turnover front, I mean, that pretty early on. I don't think it was the first drive, maybe it was the second drive against the Bengals he was in that he got strip sacked for a fumble. So turned the ball over then, and didn't look particularly good. And so it just kind of for who for what, benching Minshew at this point. Just confidence is obviously pretty shaken. But I don't think sitting on the bench is going to get him through that. He has to play through it, and so have the next couple games to try to do so. And we'll see. If not, then I think we'll be back to Ted's favorite guy, Aiden O'Connell.
It's not my favorite guy. It's just a different guy than Gardner Minshew. And I think I think we'll see a Desmond Ritter package, right? Like I would imagine Ritter's just on a bench the whole time. I think they would want to use his legs and maybe use him as an option type of quarterback, just to give some different looks to the defense. I know Scott Turner is he's into some of those college concepts. So you guys think there's a chance we see a little bit Desmond Ritter?
So they've been saying that since they got him, but I mean, we haven't really seen it. So I don't know. I don't know why it would suddenly come out now. It's play caller change, so Scott Turner might work it in somewhere. But I mean, it's not like Desmond Ritter's like Lamar Jackson or something. I know that I don't know. It's kind of weird. Or even like Marcus Mariota level, like mobility. Like I don't know that he's like breaking 20, 30 yard runs. Like maybe he's a little bit more mobile in like a quarterback sneak type of situation. But I don't know. I don't think he's like a dynamic athlete personally.
I mean, they didn't want a 20-yard run. They just want like a 6-yard run or a 7-yard run. That'd be good for that right now. So I think you're right. I think if we do see it, it won't be much. But why not throw it in? Obviously, they're having trouble running the ball. So, I mean, who knows? Play around with it, maybe get them going. But we talked to Scott Turner today about the offense and the running game, and he seemed to think that the biggest problem, that was my takeaway, was that it's the communication between the offensive line, not so much the backs themselves. So we'll see if that improves this week. And yeah, they have to run the ball. That's been a mandate all year long. They can't do it. That's why Luke Getsy is unemployed. But Scott Turner will give it a shot.
He ran a 4.52. That's no joke for a quarterback.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think he could get some runs going. Um, I mean, I think this offense just needs anything. They need to spark, and it's a new play caller, so maybe they'll stick with what they say a little bit more, and put in that option package. Speaking of Scott Turner, you guys got to talk to him. Any notable pieces of information from Scott?
So we generally know who he is just from his time, being the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator a few years ago. And, um, you know, but I think he made it clear that even though he has a different schematic background than Luke Getsy does, like it's not really realistic for him to come in week 11 and just completely install a new offense in the middle of the season. Like this is not really going to work. And so it's more so changing what they had already installed back in training camp and earlier in the offseason and seeing what adjustments and tweaks can be made. I think, they view the turnaround, if there is going to be a turnaround for the offense, it's starting with the offensive line. Just with as poorly as they run the ball, it's just kind of hard for them to find consistent success because I mean, few quarterbacks are able to, carry offense when you're running the ball that bad, but they, damn sure don't have one, right now. And so throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game just isn't going to work for them. And so that's the key, I think, is not to say that the pass protection has been great, but the run blocking has been abysmal. And so with not only Scott Turner getting a promotion, but with Joe Philbin taking over as interim offensive line coach, they seem to be optimistic that they can get some better play out the offensive line and as a result get some better play out the offense. But that really seems to be the starting point. If they can't get some better play up front, it's pretty much just going to be the same thing that they had with Lugetzi.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I said last week I thought Philbin would be the most impactful coaching change because this is a young offensive line. There's some talent. You can see the individual talent, but they just haven't played together. They haven't been able to be cohesive, and they mess up things with communication, like Scott Turner's talked about, like stunts and movements, and and just being able to get to the second level with good timing. Those are all issues that I think are correctable, and one of the main things you want to see improve as the season goes on, because this line theoretically could be a line that stays together for a while. I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson, Parham, Meredith is a young player who's played very well since being inserted in the lineup, and then obviously DJ Glazed, a rookie who's playing very well at tackle. So we'll see how this line improves with a NFL offensive line coach that's been in this league a long time. Clegg, the coach that was fired, it was his first year as the main position coach. So maybe there were some issues there. Maybe he just wasn't ready for a job. So we'll see if Philby can help improve this defensive line. Another piece of news: Michael Mayer, the Raiders' second round draft pick, tight end from last year, who's missed was it a 9 games, 8 games?
Just 7 weeks, so however many games
Yeah,
it ended up being. But he hasn't played since week 3.
yeah. So he's missed 7 games. He's back. What do you guys learn from talking with him, and what should we expect from him?
He was doing well. He's in good spirits. He didn't really go into exactly why he left, but he had to deal with something. So now he's back on his feet. He had to get some things straightened out, and his family was involved. But I think it was probably a mental health kind of deal. And he's in good spirits. He definitely looks like he's in good shape. He's been working out. I think he was back in the facility during the bye week, and so I think he'll be able to get back in there pretty quickly. I think they're looking at maybe playing this week and getting involved with some packages. So I think everyone's happy to have him back. He's definitely a very popular guy in the locker room. Very usually a big smiling face and yeah, a guy all teammates like and are pulling for. So yeah, I think everyone's happy to have him back.
Yeah, and he's basically the way it works is while he's returned to practice, like he's still technically on the non-football illness list, and so it kind of works out how injured reserve does, where you can come back in practice, but there's like a 3 week window where the team has to activate you, otherwise you're out for the season. And so he could have come back this week, but he doesn't necessarily have to if he isn't, all the way ready to go. But I mean, he looks, physically, I mean, he's in great shape. I think that's never really been an issue with him, and he says he's in a good place mentally and is doing a lot better than he was before. And so I feel like there's at least a solid chance that he returns to the field this week. And kind of going back to what we were talking about previously with Scott Turner, maybe we see the element of the offense that was talked about all offseason, but never really came to fruition. 12 personnel, using more of those two tight end formations. I know that even when Mayer was playing early in the year, they kind of went away from it because of their issues running the ball. But I think now it's kind of a necessity for them to go back to that with losing Devontae Adams as a receiver. Like I don't really know if it makes a lot of sense for them to have a whole bunch of 11 personnel out there with 3 receivers. And so I think 12 is probably their best formation, even with the run game issues. And so provide better blocking in the run game theoretically than a receiver would, and see if he's able to make an impact as a receiver, and show maybe some of those flashes that we saw towards the end of last season as he kind of started to hit his groove. And so, we'll see when he's back out there, but I think when he is, we'll start to see them lean back into that 12 personnel as we were expecting all offseason.
Yeah, I think he did improve as a blocker somewhat last year, but he's still very poor. Like it's just a very low level of blocking that we saw from him, and the sample size we saw from him this year is not big enough. So um, I think as a Raider, the Raiders need to see him improve as a run blocker. We know Bowers is going to be that flex tight end that goes downfield, and Bowers has been a very good run blocker compared to what most people thought he was going to be. I think he puts in a lot of effort. He moves guys. I mean, he's never going to be like that dominating blocker, but he does his job and he does it with great effort. And most of the time, he's going to make his block. But we need to see that from Mayer, and we need to see him become not just an adequate blocker, but a very good blocker to make this 12 personnel thing work. And if the line can improve and they can improve the run game, then you could really start cooking with gas with this 12 personnel and take advantage of some of those mismatches with tight ends on linebackers.
And I think that there's no reason not to go to it heavy now because Tony mentioned the other day, like talking about the quarterbacks and going with Gardner and kind of letting it loose. You're 2-7, right? Nothing to lose. Like try stuff out, make sure, see if you can do it in the future. See, let Michael Mayer work on his block, like you said, get better at that aspect of it. get Harrison Bryant in there. He's back from his injury, so I would say, especially with Devontae Adams being gone, two of your best receivers happen to be tight ends. So I would go with that heavy the rest of the year and see what happens.
It's something that would be very useful against the Dolphins too, who are really kind of hitting their stride on defense as far as disguising and moving guys around. And when you could get into 12 personnel and force them into base looks, it just makes everything simpler. And the Cardinals are a team that are just killing guys with their 12, 13 personnel right now. That's a good example to look at. But yeah, before we move on to the Dolphins game, let's talk about injuries.
Yeah, it's a long injury report really for both teams coming out of today. But some of the biggest, I guess, notes for the Raiders: cornerback Nate Hobbs. He hasn't practiced this week yet due to an ankle injury he suffered against the Bengals. So we'll see if he's able to get back out there. If he's not, then he'll most likely be Darnay Holmes, I would believe, starting at nickelback. Um, Andre James, he didn't practice yet this week, as also due to an ankle injury, and Antonio Pierce already said he's probably not going to play this week, and so most likely Jackson Powers Johnson's going to get a second straight start at center. Um, and then Cody White here, he hasn't practiced this week, also due to ankle injury. The Bengals field was taking everybody's ankles. Um, and so we'll see who starts at guard. I think Dylan Parham, it seems like he's made progress. He's been a full participant. So you would imagine he returns as a starter at guard. He played against the Bengals, but didn't start. So I would guess that the best interior three is Jordan Meredith, Dylan Parham, and Jackson Powers Johnson at center. We'll see how it shakes out on game day. And then Colton Miller, he also got hurt against the Bengals, but he's been practicing this week, so it looks like he'll be back at left tackle. I think they had three left tackles play against the Bengals, so that was also an issue. And so, we've talked about it, but like health has been a big of an issue as anything with the offensive line and their struggles, and they haven't really been able to have their unit together at full strength. They still won't this week, obviously, but um, they should be in better position than they were at the end of that Bengals game, where they basically were um, running out of offensive linemen. And then on the Bengals side, not the Bengals, the Dolphins side of things, it's like a mix. They have some guys that are resting, so I don't really factor them into the equation. But starting cornerback Kendall Fuller hasn't practiced this week due to a concussion, and so he's a question mark. Um, Outside of him, it's just some guys that are like limited, but will probably end up playing. So he's really the only guy that stands out that is a starter that might not be able to go for the Dolphins.
I think the big thing for the Dolphins is probably their offensive line. They were dealing with a ton of injuries versus the Rams, and you could really see that come into fruition. There were some really bad quick pressures. Do we expect their line to be healthy coming into this game?
I mean, all the guys that are part of the starting lineup are practicing at least. Some of them are limited, like Robert Jones, he's limited, and um, Isaiah Wynn's limited. But Armstead has not practiced, but it's a rest designation. So usually when guys are his rest, they're going to end up playing. So, I mean, they're not going to be fully healthy, but it seems like they'll be out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Raiders' offensive line, their best lineup, whatever combination it is, Miller, Parham, Meredith, Jackson Powers Johnston, and Glaze. So if they can keep those five on the field, I think that's going to be the best thing for the Raiders' development moving forward. And just to go back, like Parham wasn't healthy against the Bengals. Am I right? Like they didn't want to play him.
Correct. Yeah. He was hurt, and he had said like if somebody else had gone down that game, maybe they had no one else left in terms of offensive linemen. So I'm not sure what they would have done because normally I'd guess it'd be Harrison Bryant, but he was out, so I don't know who would have played tackle in that spot. But yeah, he was hurt. He only played because they had nobody else.
All right, so let's get into our Dolphins preview. What are we watching when the Raiders have the ball?
Minshew Mania Volume 2. Got a new boss. Scott Turner mentioned today they're going to have plays the players believe in. I'm not sure what that meant, but it sounded good. But yeah, I'm curious to see the new wrinkles. I think there'll be some new wrinkles. And again, they got to get the running game going, and they're going to try. I think Zamir White will get another shot at it here. And yeah, hopefully Minshew can not turn the ball over. That'd be nice. But those are the goals.
Yeah, I want to see if like I said, I don't expect Turner to come in and just completely flip what they're doing offensively, but I want to see if he's able to break some of those bad tendencies that they've shown all season. And I think we've all lamented run pass sequences that they've had that have led to a lot of quick 3 and outs and not being able to get creative in the red zone, being overly conservative. And some of that is on Antonio Pierce from a game management perspective, but it also I think they just lacked a level of aggression when it came to their offensive play calling. So be interested to see if that changes under Scott Turner, and see if he's able to spark this offense that's been struggling for what 2 or 3 years now.
And don't use up all the good stuff the first drive. Save some for later. Like don't go nuts in the script. Save some for the rest of them.
Don't try to score. Don't try to score your opening drive
Exactly. A
too
field goal's
well.
fine. A field goal's
Uh,
fine. Save the good stuff for later. So you're not totally out of ideas by the third quarter.
Yeah, but if you're like spreading out all the good plays throughout the game, you can't get a drive together. They can't even get a first drive together
Yeah.
then.
You think outside the box, man. Outside the box thinking. We're trying something different.
Yeah, you guys switched up. I think the Dolphins defense, they're obvi Anthony Weaver is a, part of the McDonald's tree, and, that defense, it takes a while to learn. I mean, when Mike McDonald first got to Baltimore, it took them a little while to really learn the defense because, part of their philosophy is, "We're gonna teach everybody everybody's job, so that you understand the defense, the entire concept, and once you get that down, we can just switch all these players around and give you all these different looks and mix things up." And the Dolphins are starting to get to that point because, they played their best game of the season against the Rams, and they really confused Matthew Stafford, who doesn't get confused very often, mixing up personnel, giving him different looks. So this Dolphins defense is starting to hit their stride, which is not a great news for the Raiders, obviously. And their interior is playing at a very high level. Zach Sealer, defensive tackle, and Calais Campbell. They wreaked havoc against the Rams inside. Calais Campbell's like 100 years old, but he's playing like still at elite level. So that's something that the Raiders going to have to watch out for. And we talked about this young interior. We talked about the communication. They're going to be tested this week. Chop Robinson, I think he was their first. He was either a first round draft pick or second round draft pick. He's starting to come on as well. Jalen Ramsey is still Jalen Ramsey, one of the top corners in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Jalen Ramsey matched up on Brock Bowers in passing situations, just because Bowers is by far the Raiders' best receiver. I know Jacoby Myers is still very good, but I just think if you're the Dolphins and you're looking at this Raiders team, you're thinking to yourself, if we put a lid on Bowers, it's going to be tough for them to move the ball. And we've seen Ramsey do that in the past. He's matched up against tight ends like George Kittle. So that's why I think that's what we're going to see.
I was impressed with the Dolphins defense on Monday. I mean, I've seen them here and there during the course of the year, and I wasn't impressed. But they got some guys back from injury, I think, recently. I think they definitely were flying around, and that's a bad sign, I think, for the for the Raiders offense. But again, well, a new game plan. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I was impressed Monday. I didn't see that that happening as far as their ability to make the Rams confused.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one weak point is if Cam Smith ends up starting at corner. He's a receiver that's exploitable. So maybe you line up Jacoby Myers on him and run some routes. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as we mentioned, if they can get the running game going, and this doesn't mean start going run pass all the time, but if you could establish some sort of efficiency on the ground, especially with 12 personnel of Michael Mayer's plays, it really simplifies the looks and simplifies what the Dolphins can do. So we'll see if they could play a little bit, if the offensive line could play a little bit better with the bye week and new coaching. All right, what are we watching for when the Dolphins have the ball?
I'm watching, for me at least, I-Chan, that's how you say it. I think the running back, I think that's how you say it. I-Chan. A-Chain,
A
A-Chain,
Achan.
chain,
A-Chain,
A chain.
A-Chain, A-Chain. All right. Anyway, he's,
The
no,
Dolphins
no,
running back.
I mean, I thought I had it, but I didn't have it. A-Chain. A-Train. A-Chain. A-Train. I'm gonna call him A-Train. A-Train
Achan.
is really really good. He's super fast. He's a good probably better at catching the ball than running the ball. He's great at that too. So for me, we'll talk about matchups I guess later on. But how the Raiders contain him, on swing passes and that kind of stuff will be a key part of this defensive plan. I think Patrick Graham mentioned today they got to kind of contain these guys, they kind of keep a top on this offense because there's so much speed, and he's one of the faster guys on that team. So I think he's the guy that I'll be watching for.
It's kind of specific, but I think the Raiders' defense is eye discipline kind of collectively. I think it's going to be really big in this game, but as much motion as McDaniel runs with the Dolphins, they do a lot of pre-snap stuff to try to confuse opposing defenses, and it often works, pretty well. And then, whether it's the run pass options or the zone reads or all the other stuff, the crazy stuff that they do. We all know that they're fast, but that's not the only way that they beat defenses. It's just a lot of it is just confusing them, and I think that's going to be pretty huge for this Raiders defense if they're going to have a chance of bottling up the Dolphins, given all the weapons that they have.
Yeah, I mean, this Dolphins offense is extremely unique. As far as the running game, they are an outside running team. They want to get outside on you, and they'll do everything they can to get outside. Tua does all this sleight of hand stuff that I've really never seen on the field before, with some of the flips and turning his back to the defense, some of the footwork he's executing. It's pretty high level stuff. I just wrote an article about how the wing T offense, which is like an old school deceptive offense, it's really inspired a lot of what the NFL is doing, and it's playing a huge role in what the Dolphins are doing. So you really have to be disciplined with your eyes. You can't bite on fakes too hard because they have a reverse coming. But really, if you could stop the outside run game, then you really silo this Dolphins offense. They're not a tough team that could run inside and pound a rock inside, and that's one of the things that the Raiders did well last year was stopping the Dolphins' outside run game. And when I talked to Patrick Graham, that was his number one intention coming into the game. I think that'll be his number one intention coming into this game as well. And I think Tyreek Hill, he's dealing with his wrist injury. Waddle's dealing with multiple injuries. They just don't look like they're separating at the same level they were last year. It doesn't mean they're still not dangerous receivers, but this just isn't the same explosive passing game, even with Tua back, that we saw last year. Um, but I mean, teams are still going to double Tyreek Hill. You still can't let him get on top of you. The Rams had some success playing a lot of cover two, but what they were doing is they're playing their linebackers inside a lot. So they're squeezing the inside routes and just taking away the inside and forcing Tua to throw outside, and which he kind of struggled with. And Tua's not a quarterback that typically makes plays outside the pocket. If you could force him into that game, typically you win. But against the Rams, he made 4 or 5 plays out of structure that really changed the game for the Dolphins. And there was one in particular on 3rd and 19 when he got a pass rusher got right into the backfield and hit him, and he somehow got away from that and got the ball off to Mostert to convert on a 3rd and 19. I don't think Tua could do that too often. So I think if you could somehow squeeze those inside routes, make him hold the ball, typically you're going to win. So we'll see if the Raiders could do that. I thought they did a pretty good job of confusing him last year. So I think Patrick Graham is going to have a pretty creative game plan coming off the bye week. So we'll see if they could contain his speed. But now, like you mentioned, Achan is such a good threat out of the backfield that when you're playing deep and taking away Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you can check the ball down to Achan, and he's just dangerous as a check down option or a underneath option. So this Dolphins offense, I don't think is the same level they were last year, but still very dangerous. Oh, and they're going to need Jack Jones to tackle too, which because they like to get to the perimeter and they like to force corners to tackle. I think Jaquan Bennett will be up for the job. We'll see if Jack Jones is up for the job. But I will say with Jack Jones, I think he tries to do it, and maybe he'll be able to tackle Achan, who's more dependent on juking defenders rather than running them over. But we will see. All right, matchups of the game. What matchups are you guys looking for?
If it happens, I think that one that you highlighted, Ramsey covering Bowers is going to be the one. We've seen Ramsey defend bigger receiving targets before, and I know Brock isn't the biggest tight end, so that maybe makes it even more likely. But Bowers, he's been pretty consistently successful no matter who he's matched up again. I think the Raiders have just struggled to keep him involved throughout full games at times, and got to give the defense credit for that because I'm sure they're mixing up their coverages and playing them in different ways. But I think that at some point you just got to get more creative in the ways to get him the ball. You can't have him finishing with only 4 or 5 targets or going these long stretches without seeing it. And so I think that matchup and how the Raiders attack it is going to be the one to watch.
Yeah, I agree with that one, and also the one I mentioned earlier, A-Train against Devon Diablo, whoever the linebacker is, or the safety has to cover him or try to keep him honest. I think that'll be the big, like you mentioned. I think they'll they do a good job of sitting Tyreek Hill and Waddle down deep, and there's a lot of space there for A-Train to move around, and he's really hard to tackle. He's super fast, so it'll be a big challenge for either Devon Diablo or for I don't think it'll be Traylon Merrick, but maybe Palomalo, but we'll see.
Yeah, mine will be Meredith against Sealer and Calais Campbell. I mean, he's played
He's
well.
blocking.
I'm
He's
I'm
blocking
just
both
curious to
guys. You got to do
see
both. Man, whew.
either one, either one. I mean, I don't know which guy they'll line up in front of him most of the time, but those are two very, very good defensive tackles, and I want to see what he's made out of. I want to see if this guy's legit, and he's like I said, he's not that old, but he's at the same time he's had a couple of years in this league, and if he could emerge as a solid starter for this offensive line, it just gives you another chip to move forward with in the future. All right, X factors. Who are you guys X factors?
My X factor is going to be Michael Mayer. If I think if he plays, he might give him a little spark. And I think you mentioned 12 personnel. I mean, Harrison Bryant also may play, but maybe that will affect the decision on who gets out there. But I think the second tight end could be a big guy in this offense starting this weekend and going forward. So we'll see. I think Michael Mayer, if he wants to play, I think he's in good shape. And they had high hopes for him. Training camp, we had a great camp. We kind of forget about that. But we had a great camp, so he's kind of been a missing piece. They can get him back in there and see what they have with him.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Ja'Cory and Bennett. I think particularly going against this Dolphins offense with as much speed as they have. I think Bennett is going to have a huge role in trying to stick with them. I mean, he's fast as hell himself. He ran a 4.3 at the combine a couple of years ago, and he's been really strong in coverage throughout the year, but he just hasn't been able to get there when it comes to making plays on the ball and forcing turnovers. And so, I think if he's able to come up with a pick in this one, first pick of I think it would be his career. First pick of his
Yeah.
career, I'm pretty sure is able to do that, I think that could be something that helps swing the game for the Raiders.
Yeah, he's knocked down passes. He's high up there in pass defense, but he just hasn't been able to finish for an interception quite yet. I'll be watching for Tyree Wilson. I think the last 2 games have been very good for Tyree as far as, impacting and getting into the backfield. Still so much room to grow as far as a technical from a technique standpoint. But just the ability to give offensive linemen trouble with just his raw ability, it shows up, and I think he's getting more confident. Let's see how much he's improved during this bye week. And I think the weakness in this Dolphins interior is their interior. I mean, this Dolphins offense is the interior of their offensive line. So the Rams interior gave them a ton of trouble. So I want to see Tyree be able to power through some of these guys and give Tua some trouble inside. All right, everybody's favorite part of the show: predictions.
Vic, you starting us off? I mean, your prediction's already out there. You can
Yeah,
Vic's
they do
picks
the
are,
great
you
Vic's
know,
picks. I'm setting a world record for the worst record ever. I'm having a horrific year, so that's good news for Raider fans. Because I picked the Dolphins to cover the spread. I think it's 8.5 point spread or maybe a little less. But I just think I was really impressed with the Dolphins defense. I know their offense has got some question marks, some injuries, but I think the Raiders have a hard time scoring. Shock, and I think so. I'm gonna go Dolphins 27. Raiders 17.
that was my
Yeah,
score, man.
that's what I'm talking about. You can't have me go first.
Oh, wait, Dolphins
What?
cover? I thought you said
No,
Raiders
Dolphins
cover.
cover.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm sticking with my score.
Yeah,
Fuck it,
fuck
I'm
it.
not changing this. I think the same thing. I got the Dolphins winning 27-17. Yeah, I think like Vic said, I just don't see. I think this offense is so deeply flawed that just having a new play caller isn't going to change things that
Deeply
much, to be
flawed.
honest.
There are cracks.
Especially going against the defense.
So there's cracks in the
But
foundation. I was gonna say. Go ahead.
I don't know if there's a foundation, but the Dolphins defense is playing really well. And their offense hasn't, Tua missed a lot of time, and I think they're still trying to find their groove a little bit with him coming back. But um, you know, I just think this one gets away from the Raiders a little bit as their games have tended to do as of late. So I have them dropping their sixth in a row.
See. All right, Teddy, give us the upset. Let's go.
Yep, I'm
I
gonna
knew, I
do
knew,
it.
I knew you were.
I'm gonna predict the Raiders win. I'm gonna
Uh,
predict a big upset. You guys hear what Deshaun Elliott said about the Dolphins from his time there? He said on the
Yes,
podcast they're a
they're
sausage team
softer.
and
Yeah.
they're mentally weak. They go to strip clubs before games. Um,
Mm.
so I think they're happy about this
It's
Rams
not.
win. They take
is
the
that bad?
Raiders. They're not taking the Raiders
Is that a
seriously.
bad thing? I don't know. Mm.
Yeah, they're not taking the Raiders seriously. They're gonna go to a strip club before Sunday's game, and they're gonna come out and they're gonna lay egg. I think Patrick Graham knows how to screw with Tua a little bit, and I think they're gonna have a good game plan against Tua. I think Max Crosby is gonna go off in this game. I think Tyree Wilson is gonna have
Woo!
a couple
Let's
pressures.
go. Couple
Um,
pressures. Come on,
this
give him a sack. Give him a
I thought you were gonna
sack. Give
say a
him a
couple
all right,
sack.
sacks.
four pressures. He's gonna have four
Okay.
pressures
All
and
right, give
and
him
a
a
sack
sack. Give him a
and a
Wow.
sack. Give
deflected
him.
pass.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
And then I think offensively, they just get it's a flawed team, but I think the offensive line is going to find some cohesion. Maybe they're able to move the ball on the ground a little bit more. They get the fired coach jolt, which is always a real thing, right? They get the jolt. Uh,
Uh,
at least for one game,
It
right? At
is
least
for
for one
coaches. I don't know
game.
about coordinators, but yeah, I mean, but maybe. All right. I will steer your thunder. Go
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, and I think though Brock Bowers gets
Woo!
a couple big no, not Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers have a hard time with Jalen Ramsey. I'll say Jacoby Myers gets a couple big plays on Cam Smith, and yeah, I think they pull the game off. Let's say
Wow, what
24-23.
a game!
Oh man,
I,
that was
I can't
very
wait to
thorough.
be there and watch that kind of game. That's awesome.
Yep. All right. So we're
All
not
right.
all in agreement. So there's no chance of curse either way. So let's get into some fan questions. All right. Ozzy Smith asks, with JPJ again at center, is this the end for Andre James as a Raider?
Woo. I don't want to say ideally that kind of comes off harsh, but I think if Jackson can play well at center, I think they were kind of torn about his future if it was going to be a center or guard, but I think it looks like he may be better suited at center. I think if he can have some momentum and kind of run with that, I think that'll be his job, for the next I don't know decade ideally. But if that's the case, you don't really need Andre James around, I guess. But I think they can get out of his deal after this year, so. Um, yeah, I think you never would say best case scenario the guy would be out of a job, but I think that's what the Raiders are probably thinking that they can kind of move forward without him if things work out well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think most people had Jackson Powers Johnson his best position at the next level being at center. He was an All-America player at that position at Oregon last year, and I think it makes sense. I mean, it wasn't like he was lit the world on fire last week, but I thought he was solid. And that's where he has the most upside, I would say. Um, in terms of James, like his Raiders career being over, I mean, I don't know. I think they just gave him a deal, so I think it'd be a little bit tricky to move on after this year. I think his dead cap hit would be like $7 million if they were to cut him this offseason, let's say. And they have a lot of cap space, so that's not like um, it wouldn't be something they're unable to do, but that's not exactly something you're rushing to do. And so I think if they couldn't find like a trade partner, maybe they could find somebody to trade for. I still think Andre, he's had a rough year, but I think he's a starting caliber center at least. And so maybe you could get him for like a day three pick or something. But outright just cutting him, I don't know if that's something that makes a lot of sense. Even with them having a bunch of cap space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they would do with him, whether it's cut him or keep him as a expensive backup. But I just think if you feel like Jackson Powers Johnson, his best position at center, leave him there, let him develop. He could be your center for 10 years, and we know where Andre James' ceiling is, and I think at best he's a solid starter, maybe a little bit better than a solid starter, but I think you're hoping for a much higher ceiling with Jackson Powers Johnson, and he's kind of shown those flashes. Um, so yeah, I think don't let this bad contract stop you from developing Jackson Powers Johnson as a center. But we'll see what the Raiders do. All right, next question. Why not go with Ritter and see what he's got? Is there a wink nod understanding with AP to play Uncle Rico, the turnover machine to lose and gain a better pick? And AP will be back in 25 from Snake 81211. Wow, what a loaded question.
There's a lot there. I think the thing with Gardner Minshew is that if you look at his body of work, his career, he has not been this bad. So he clearly this is his worst year. So you're hoping you can turn that around and go back to being the fun-loving guy who makes some plays every now and then and wins you some games. In the meantime, well, it's all short term now. Cause we mentioned Aiden O'Connell's back soon. I think he'll get the next crack at it as far as being a full time guy. So I just we talked about Ritter. I just don't think it was worth it. I think there's a lot of question marks with him. A lot of he got beat out by Clayton Tune in Arizona, which is not something you want to put in your resume. So I just think clearly, I think he's the guy who can help him out. And they're missing some bodies, but they decided that Gardner is going to keep going with this until they get Aiden back.
Yeah, and also to be clear, like they're going to keep losing regardless of
Yeah,
which
thank you,
which
thank you.
which one of these
Very
guys starts
important.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, like when it comes to the
well,
whole with the
thank you.
tanking because they're stick with Minshew thing, like this team, they're not winning. They're going to be bad regardless. We'll see how bad they are, but um, you know, we've seen all of their movies before.
Yeah, I mean, there's no significant ceiling risers at quarterback this year. I mean, I'll maintain that I think Aiden O'Connell can develop into something a little bit better, but we will see when he comes back. All right, let's last question from Fire McDonald's. I don't know who McDonald's is, but is Shedeur and Dion our future head coach QB duo? There was some news today. I think some insider suspected that they might come as a package deal now. Even though Dion said in an interview, I heard him say this that he's not going to follow Shadir to the NFL, but who knows with Dion what's really going on.
I mean, you got to say that when you're still a head coach somewhere. You can't just be like, "Yeah,
I
I'm
got
leaving."
I got 4 games left. I'm out of this. I'm out of this. I'm out of
Yeah,
here. But
yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's a circus. You know, the Raiders are a circus. So I can't say you're not going to book the next circus act to come to town, and that would be a circus again. But ideally, no. But you never can rule it out. And I think as far as Dion goes, I'm sure his ruling is weighing staying at Colorado, maybe going back to Florida State, maybe NFL job. He'll have a lot of opportunities, a lot of decisions to make. But you would hope that the Raiders don't do that. I think, but I don't know. Who knows?
Dion, I know he's a very polarizing head coach, but he's done a pretty good job at Colorado. Obviously, that's not the NFL level. Like I said, I don't know. Who's to say that he doesn't have a
Yeah,
chance to be a good NFL head coach? I'm pretty sold on Shador. Like if I was in a position to take a quarterback and needed one, like he'd be my quarterback one at this point. So I'm all in on that half of the equation. From a head coach perspective, again, we have to see from on a serious note, like what happens the rest of the season to see if AP keeps his job. It's not a done thing that he's out of there, but it's also not a guarantee that he's going to be back either. So we have to see how things play out from that perspective. But I do think like they're going to be in range to draft Shador, and if they are and he's there, that should be quarterback one next year.
I like Shadur. Do I like him enough to take him with a mandate to bring in Deion Sanders? Absolutely not. I mean, he's a first round quarterback, but like as far as I in a normal year, I don't think he would be a top 10 pick, but I mean, he's going to probably get pushed into the top 10 this year. And I mean, like you got to be like like a Joe Burrow type of prospect, or I don't know, even Caleb Williams type of prospect to start making those kind of demands. And even if when you make those demands, it sounds kind of ridiculous. And again, we don't know if it's true that Dion does want to make the jump, but yeah, I mean, I just don't think he's that close to that caliber of prospect to start demanding things like that. So we will see, but I think he would be a great draft pick. just on a standalone draft pick for Raiders if they're able to get him. All right, well that's it for our show today. Make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, leave us a good comment wherever you guys get your podcast, Apple or Spotify. Make sure you rate us and leave a review. Thank you guys for listening again. I know it's been a tough season, but we're gonna stick with it, and we will be live streaming after the
Oh,
Dolphins game when they will pull an upset, and prove Vic and Tashan
that's
wrong.
right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm doing
You
a
know?
podcast live from Mangoes in South Beach, so it might be a little loud, but it's all right. We'll make it work.
Is
Yeah.
that a strip club?
No,
We'll,
it's not a strip club.
yeah, we'll be on the second floor of Tootsie's getting shoulder rubs and recording the podcast.
Yes, might as well go
So
to a strip club. You might see some Miami Dolphins over there.
that's what I'm saying. We might get the Dolphins in there celebrating.
Uh, or sad because Ted says they'll be sad, so maybe they'll be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's also well. It sounds like according to Elliot, they'll be
Oh yeah,
celebrating
there's
either
yeah,
way because they
that
clearly
makes
don't
sense.
care
Yeah,
about football.
exactly.
Yeah, man.
So,
Okay. All right. We'll see you
All right,
guys on Sunday.
all right,
hasta
y'all.
la vista.